I want to thank the choir. They have been practicing really hard, and they're in plaid because they're going to sing a Western song here, right? Country Western song. And but that first song you sang was beautiful today. And the other thing I'd like to point out, something that y'all have already, I'm sure all have felt, that Anna, when she's up here doing the welcome and taking everybody in, it's just perfect. I don't know how she does it. I especially like the way she claps, too. So, today we're going to talk about opening the heart, and, this is a sometimes easy, sometimes difficult thing for all of us, and, I've just been watching myself lately. It seems it's one day is good, next day is bad, I don't know. So, bear with me if I seem at times congruent with this and other times incongruent with what I'm saying. I'll start with a story. I was 30 years old, and I had fallen into a state of kind of depression and anger. And I started doing these workshops that were held out in San Francisco, and I became a small group leader in that workshop. And one of the things that was happening while that was going on was everybody was sitting in the circle in the middle of this 4-day event, and they were doing a closed-eye contemplation or meditation. And I thought, being the facilitator, I would send them love, unconditional love. So I did my best, and I could feel myself trying to send love. And you ever had a really old tube of toothpaste that has crusted over, and you have to really squeeze it to get anything out? So I was really pressuring my heart to send some love out, and it came out like, at which point I knew I had a problem, and so I spent about 10 years working on heart meditation as my practice, which was essentially focusing on the energies of the heart and feeling into the heart, breathing into the heart. It's almost the exact same thing we do here. And we just did it upstairs with the Sacred Prayer Circle, where you breathe into the heart and you send energy from your heart to your hand and back into the heart, and use this energy. I got to where I was pretty good at it, and I could send energy across a river and affect somebody's ability to kayak on the other side, at least according to my perception. And it became, with practice, it became something I could do. But in that practice of opening my heart, I began to realize that every time I went to a certain depth, I felt grief. That in this heart, there was this sadness and grief. Of course, that was what was underneath all the anger and the depression, right? And it took about 10 years for it to lift completely. And even now, when I move into the heart, quite often I am close to tears, and I have that sensitivity. And I think all of us have a real sensitivity when we get to this unprotected heart. We're become really, I won't say fragile, but we do become very sensitive. And so it's said that when the heart is open, a feather can hurt. And so I think that's why we develop this crust around the heart and begin to set up the walls, and we do whatever we can to protect it, and we're estranged from others. So in the Sacred Prayer Circle just a few minutes ago, we were up there, and we started the whole thing off by talking about someone, something, some event, something that you really truly loved. And one of the first people to speak said, I was thinking of people that were really, I held in my heart. They were very flawed people when I was with them. And I thought, of course, they're very flawed people when they're with them. That's how I think of them, those people at the time. But then as time passes, I look from a distance and I see them more clearly. And we love them, right? And we love them, and they reside in our hearts then, just without all that commentary on their flaws. This is and then someone else in the circle said, oh, let me tell you one more. So someone else in the circle said, this friend of mine is dying. He's dying. And he's in hospice. And I go to see him, and I try to talk to him, and all he can say is, I love you. And someone across the room said, why do we wait so long? Why do we wait so long to have that as our standard experience, our full experience? And I think it is that we're trying to protect something and trying to save something from, we're in a state of protection. And I think the thing we're in a state of protection are two things. One is our body, in part, but more often what we're really trying to protect is our identity, our sense of self, our personality. And this protection of the personality is why we put up these walls, so that our hearts won't be broken. But when you're dying and you've lost everything already, you don't have anything to protect. And so what was there can come out. Or when you're at a distance and it's been years since you were with that person, then all you see is the beauty in them. And that's what comes out. Is because we've stopped protecting. And so the question of how do we become that person that loves with their heart open all the time is we must learn somehow to deal with this self-protection. We must overcome the natural tendency to take care of the heart by self-protection. Because, as I said before, it is as tender as it can be. And when it's open, a feather hurts. And most people are tougher on us than a feather, even if they don't mean to be. So, in the first service I did a meditation, and in the first service I asked people what would happen if, what would you experience if your heart was open all the time? And so I'm up here leading this meditation, but thinking about that meditation at the same time. What would happen is that I would be like Jesus. And I know Jesus may not have been like this, but this is what I'm thinking. I would be like Jesus. Open-hearted. I was reading a book that Anna gave me about by Ram Dass, and his guru said, love everyone and tell the truth. Love everyone and tell the truth. And that's essentially what I think Jesus' story in the Gospels is. He loves everyone, but he tells the truth. So the Sadducees and the Pharisees, they get smacked around a bit. But in general, he loves everybody. And that's what it would be like if I could do that. And then if you're taken to your crucifixion, which most of us get taken there once and twice a week, but when we're on our way to our crucifixion, rather than condemning what's happening, you would say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And you would be in a state of non-resistance. And one of the things I'm sure we would be is a lot quieter. We wouldn't yell and scream. Now, I'm going to come to that in a minute, but I just want to say this state of open-heartedness would put us in a very high state, and does not mean that you would not suffer physically or emotionally from other people or events. You would just be in a high state. That distinction is important. Because if you think you could open your heart and keep everybody being nice about you, just try it for a week and come back and report how it's going. Something's going to happen. And so one of the things that happens is that you get nicked, and then you go, well, ooh, I get nicked in a situation like this, I'm closing it down around this situation, and that becomes amplified because of a thing I like to compare it to is called a feedback loop, a positive feedback loop. It's not a positive thing, it's a thing that amplifies what happens. So when the classic positive feedback loops is if I took this microphone and stuck it in front of a speaker, you know what would happen, right? That's a positive feedback loop when it starts to scream at you because it's hearing itself back and forth until it just gets louder and louder and louder. And then we can't stand it in here and they have to shut the whole thing down. Positive feedback loop. People are positive feedback loops to you as well. How you treat somebody, how you engage, the energy with which you come in contact with someone is fed back to you. And so what would happen is if you start to close your heart down because of an event that happened, you create the beginning of a positive feedback loop, which will be amplified by the next person or event that is similar to that you close it down. It will come back to you louder, and then you'll do it, oh man, I've got to be careful. Then you will go close further, and then, oh man, this is a dangerous place, and you will become habituated in this, and you will walk around like I was when I was in my 30s trying to open my heart, and it's just like, no way, right? The positive feedback has got it. So the opposite of a positive feedback loop is a negative feedback loop, which is what we do when we drive. So if you're driving along and the car is veering off to the right, you pull it to the left. If it's veering off to the left, you pull it to the right. That's negative. It does the opposite of what it's doing. If you were in a positive feedback loop, if there's a ditch over there and you're pulling off to the right, you turn it right into the ditch, and then you drive down the ditch and you flip over and it get bigger to go into a ball of flame. That'd be a positive feedback loop. Or you could do a negative feedback loop and you turn left and veer away from it, right? The trick is to know when to do one and when to do the other. So when you start down this road of closing down your heart, you can realize that the world is not going to be the one to tell you to open it, most likely. Unless you built the wall up and then you have this beautiful experience that comes out of the blue that you don't expect, like Kim was saying in her reading. But in general, you'll get more of the same. In that moment, you need to turn left, get out of the ditch. Get out of the ditch. And go toward opening your heart again. And realize that, yes, someone's going to step on it. But you can't afford to collapse into fear and into anger. If you do, it just builds on itself and becomes a positive feedback loop of fear and anger. And we've over the last few weeks, I've been talking about the political situation, but I mean, you can see how that's amplified. It's just gone nuts. It's a positive feedback loop. You're a jerk. No, you're a jerk, right? Now, in relationships, close friends, family members, loved ones, they do this. They get in a positive feedback loop with each other. It's love, love, love until it's not. And then someone needs to break the spell. They do a negative feedback loop and make it back. Are you with me, how this works? So your heart is tender, and you want to keep it safe, and you can't. You just can't. Because there's no real safety inside that wall either. It's less of a life, but it's not really safe because it's starving in there. It's the kind of thing that only lives in its exuberance of giving and being and receiving. Just like the rest of life. It only lives in the exuberance of giving and receiving. That's where the joy and the meaning and the passion come from. It's in the giving and receiving. It's not in being statically hid behind a wall. So we're stuck with this situation that's not easy. This is the human condition. And our best shot is to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, right? Country Western. And how do you do that? So just as Einstein said, the level of significant problems cannot be dealt with at the level at which they were created. You need to move to a higher state. One of the things we need to do is to accept that we are not just bodies and personalities. Fundamentally important. is hard to really break out if you can't get this one. Maybe you jump over it, but I think largely we need to know that we're not just bodies and personalities. And this is a philosophical, or if you're lucky, you've had the experience, but just the thought process that this is not all of you. That you might imagine that this is essentially the active part on this plane of the soul, which I'm going to define as the eternal aspect of you, the part that lives on, that never will die, doesn't reside in the body, so it can't be killed, doesn't reside as the body, so it can't be killed. And so this soul is having an experience in this particular place where you stand, and you have always, or maybe predominantly, believed you were this particular thing, but in fact, that's just your finger, and you're not just your finger, but you're the whole body. And the soul is the whole body, the whole of you who's having a evolving experience, and this is but one moment in it. If you can see that, maybe having a thought about multiple lives, reincarnation might help to make that seem true. But this soul is having this experience, and it will endure whatever. It will not die. But if you're identified only as the body or the personality, then death seems possible. And the death of the personality is possible. And you could be attacked, and you might suffer as a personality. But at a higher level, you're not worried about that particularly. It's just the drama you're in. So the body and the personality can have all the emotions and all the reactions, but if you can see it from a higher place, if you can at least contemplate, there is a higher place from which you can look upon this, you have the beginning of solving the problem from a higher level rather than from the human level. And the second thing you can do is to develop the witness state, which is very much related to what I just said about the soul. The witness state is where you are the observer, not the doer. Now, in Islam, there is a famous paintings that you often see there in Islam, which has two birds on a branch. One bird is eating, the other bird is watching. Part of you is doing, part of you is watching. To identify only with the doing part and not with the watching part gets you stuck in the doing. It's a kind of captures all of your mind, but if you can bring some of it to the awareness that you are watching this, you begin to get some distance, some elevation on it. And to do that, one of my favorite ways of doing that is something that Stacey Allen has been leading here, is called the headless way. We've done this a couple of times here. I'll just describe it. So basically, the headless way, imagine for me at this moment that your peripheral vision is getting wider and wider, and you're really not focused so much about what's right in front of you. You're getting wider and wider and wider and wider. Right? You with me? Everybody playing this game? And pretty soon, you're like on the prow of a ship, and there's no thing but the awareness, right? Your head has disappeared. You're just experiencing. It's not I'm experiencing, I'm doing this, it's experiencing. So you can see when you do that, you've dropped the personality as the doer and you've come to the witness state. You're no longer, I'm watching this, but watching this is happening. A little trick, it might help. But anyway, give it some thought. A little practice, it gets easier to drop into this experience of the witness, and now you're in the witness, and it becomes an antidote to this obsession that I am the personality in the body. Okay, so you're developing space between you and the thing. And then I think also a little bit of knowledge at the personality level, which is you get a choice often. You get the choice of being right or being happy. Most of us choose the former, not the latter, because I don't know why. But we do. We choose, I'm going to be right. And not only that, I'm going to share it with you. Sooner or later, you'll come to my point of view, idiot, because I can't believe they don't pay me to tell you this stuff. I mean, it's like, here's a word of advice. If they don't pay you to tell you that stuff, they don't want to hear it. They really don't. It's like they'll come to it on their own. Maybe you could leave a breadcrumb, but after the story's over, sometime later, maybe when they're so far gone that you don't care, you could tell it in such a way they wouldn't have a charge. But generally, when you're in it, it's too close. Relax. They'll come to it. You don't have to be right. Your objective is to be happy and to be fulfilled, right? So we shut up, just quite simply. Don't talk so much. Listen. And in the listening comes the answer. In the listening to the other person at depth comes the thing that they are looking for sure, which is to be heard. Can I get an amen on that? How many people have been in a relationship when all you wanted was to be heard, and they continue to tell you how you're wrong? Don't they do that all the time? Aren't they always doing that? Thank God we don't do that. This is our possibility, is to shut up and listen. Not shut up and listen while you're doing something else. Yeah, tell me about that. I got all day to hear what you have to say. No, to actually listen. And in general, it doesn't always work, but I found when I was really in some situations that if I really truly listened, even those people who talk all the time, they kind of go, oh, they heard me. And occasionally they don't do that, and then I have to leave, because I'm not talking, right? But just listen with your body, with your mind, with all of you, and see if it doesn't change the situation. Because we just want to be known, really. I think we really want to be known. Okay, so, higher thought. We are not just the body and the personality. We are not only the doer, but we're also the witness. And we don't have to say so much. We can listen. And then practice the energetics of opening your heart. I think it's not a given that everybody knows how to open your heart. And so what worked for me was to meditate, to breathe, to focus energy, to imagine a light coming into it, to practice breathing into this part of my body. This is where the energy of the heart resides. And to do this often enough that you could, in a breath, change your state so that you can come from head to heart on demand. For me, that didn't come overnight, I can tell you. And right at the moment, I think I'm out of shape and can't do it myself. But if you do that, you have the ability to influence the world around you. You do have an energetic effect on the people around you. And so as you move into the heart, then the world begins to hear you as the heart rather than as this mind. I was talking with somebody after the first service, and he was saying, I really need to start working on my network. I said, well, maybe you should practice opening your heart. He goes, I said, you can't outthink him. He says, no, I can't outthink him, but I sure can't out-criticize him. I went, oh, that was too much like me. Did you mean to say that? Are you saying something about me? No, this critical self is the gap, puts a distance between us and the other person. It objectifies them. It degrades them from being who they are, right? So if we can pull back and just open our hearts and not have the mind game go on, I think we make the conditions for a world that is loving. Now, Ram Dass has a way of describing the phrase namaste, which I think everybody here has heard. But this is the way he says it. Namaste means, I honor the place in you where the entire universe resides. I honor the place in you of love, of light, of truth, and of peace. I honor the place in you where, if you are in that place in you, and I am in that place in me, there is only one of us. Namaste. That is our practice. To come to the place of namaste and to reside in that, which does not mean you will not be crucified. But it does mean you will live in a place higher than that little critic can ever produce, than your personality without it can ever achieve. The depth and meaning of your life may come with tears and sorrows, but it will come with passion and power. It's very different to be in your heart than to just be hiding behind a wall. Let us pray. We begin by go deeper, please, into the relaxation. Let the body have a break. If you're holding pressure or tension somewhere, it's possibly because you're trying to protect something. So let your shoulders drop and your face relax and the tongue and the lungs relax. We are so blessed to be a human being. And it is so tricky. So let us do our best to relax in this moment and be in this body, but not just be the body or the personality. Let us connect with our souls. The soul has caused us to be here so that we might experience something. We can. So we breathe into our hearts and we feel the place in the center of the chest that reminds us and knows that it is love. The heart is opening. Consider it like a rose whose petals open one at a time. Warmth of the breath can help. Little does it respond to criticism. Let it be opened just by you loving. now that it is open, send your love somewhere. Everywhere or someplace in particular. Add to it words of blessing. Add to it namaste. And so it is.